There are many times when you create a formula where you also need to copy that formula into many cells below it in the same column. In column J are some salaries. There are about 750 of them. In cell L3, right here, is a formula that's calculating a new salary. And we want to use the same formula for every cell downward in column L corresponding with all the column J entries. Everybody's going to be getting a 3.73% increase. We've got an absolute address in there to take care of that. We round the results to the nearest whole dollar. The standard way to do this is to drag from the lower right-hand corner. Possibly you use the right mouse button and do a copy. That's usually not as efficient, although it can work as well. If we start to drag this, and if you pardon the pun for the second, this could be a real drag. This is 700 rows, but what if it's 70,000 or 170,000? We've got a lot of rows in Excel worksheets. It's going to be a lot faster if we simply double-click, as I'm doing here. And right away, you would be concerned and you'd be wondering, how far did this get copied? And a quick way to find out is to press Control Period and then press it again. Control Period simply moves the active cell around a highlighted range. The logic behind this is we want this to be copied downward as long as there's data in adjacent columns to the left. There can be a gap here and there. This still works. So if I were to press Control Z to undo this, for example, I'll take out this one momentarily. What happens when we double click? It does go all the way down the column. Now that didn't happen in prior versions, so that might surprise you if you are familiar with this shortcut. However, if there is an empty row in here, suppose for example there's an empty row right here. I'm going to put it in on purpose, right there, row 16. Now we'll double click and see what happens. So it works along with your other adjacent data, and if there's a gap in the immediate column to the left, it'll still copy the information below that. But if you have a completely empty row in the midst of this, it will not work perhaps the way you might be expecting it to. But there's no question this can be a huge, huge time saver here. Again, double-click the lower right-hand corner. Now I'm doing this with formulas, but it could just as easily be done with text or with values. And let's say I probably wouldn't really put in a tax rate here, but just to illustrate the point here, if I put in 10% and strictly a value, double click here, this too gets copied all the way down the column. So whether it's text, whether it's a value, or whether it's a formula, the information will be copied repeatedly. And of course, the real value here is when it is a formula like we see here, and it does get adjusted properly. In other words, the formula gets copied in a relative way. There's no question this is a time saver. I wish there were a similar feature for copying information across a row, but there isn't.